Okay, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is April Hain. I'm a consular officer, and I'm going to talk today a little bit about the process for applying for a student visa. Next slide. Okay, we're going to talk about, just give you an overview of the process. I'm going to give you some statistics and then give you some resources where you can get some more information. Okay, what is a visa? A visa is basically a big sticker that goes into your passport, and it gives you permission to apply for entry into the United States. So with this, you can get on a plane, arrive in U.S. at an airport, and then you will speak with a Customs and Border Protection official who will decide whether you are admissible to the U.S. So once they say you're admissible and you're allowed into the U.S. for the purpose of study or whatever purpose you're coming to the U.S., then you have what's called status. Next slide, please. So status is that's granted by the DHS, which is the Department of Homeland Security, and that talks about, or that refers to the time that you are in the U.S. Students are generally admitted for what's called duration of status, which means it's not a particular date and time, but it means that you're admitted and you can stay in the U.S. as long as you are actively studying. Next slide. Okay, so here are the different visa classifications. So typically the F is the most common, and that's usually people who are coming to study for either language or for a bachelor's degree or master's degree, so on. The J exchange visitor, the J visa, is a participant in what we call cultural exchange programs. There are over 115 different programs, and as you can see here, some of them are for high school students, college students, students who are getting a particular type of degree, or some students who are getting, for example, a certificate, some kind of certificate program. And then the M visa are for people who are coming for a non-academic or vocational type of thing, like auto mechanics or something like that. Next slide. Okay, so who needs to apply for a visa? Anyone who's coming to the U.S. for the first time, if they're going to, in one of these statuses, if they're going to study something or if they're going to be an exchange visitor. People who are qualified, who live in a country that has the visa waiver program, in order to study in the U.S., they will need to apply for a visa. In other words, they cannot come and study on the visa waiver program. So anyone who entered in the United States in one status, so for example, if you entered as a tourist and you wanted to come to the U.S. and check out some schools, you would have, and then you went back to your home country. Then to come back and study, you would need to have an F visa. You couldn't come in on the B again for the purpose of studying. And then for J visas, if someone came previously on a J program and they have a J visa that's not expired, they can't use that same visa. They need to get a different visa, an additional visa. So each J visa corresponds with a J program. So if you're coming for a different J program, you'll need a new J visa. Okay. So the visa process. So the law about visas and who qualifies for student visa is the same all over the world. It's applied the same, but the different processes, or the process can vary from embassy to embassy. So for example, an embassy in India might have a slightly different process than the embassy in China. So if once you decide that you want to be a student and you get the proper forms, you should go to the embassy's website and see what their process is. Some places have, you have to go to, say, a third party in order to get a picture taken or give fingerprints. Some places you do that directly at the embassy. But in any case, so F1 and M students, you will need to have an I-20 in order to apply. And you can apply for your visa, or you can actually get your visa up to 120 days before the report date that's listed on your I-20. And then J visa applicants, they can be issued a visa as soon as they obtain their DS 2019. More about those forms in a second. Next slide. Okay, so actually applying for the visa, the first thing that you'll need is your I-20 if you're going to apply for an F visa, or a DS 2019 if you're going to apply for a J visa. This is the first document that you need, excuse me, in order to be able to start your application. So after you have that, then the next step is to go to make an appointment at the embassy that is closest to you. You are going to fill out a form online. It's called a DS-160, and then you'll need to pay a SEVIS fee that varies depending on the program that you're going to undertake. And then you're going to pay what's called an MRV fee. So that fee is actually the application fee. So one form, the DS-160, and 2 fees. The MRV fee right now is $160, and the SEVIS fee can be up to $200. So after you make your application online, you pay your fees, then the next step is to actually go to the embassy and have your visa interview. Next slide. Okay, now these are the documents that you'll have to take with you to the interview. The I-20 or DS 2019, as we've just discussed, a passport, your passport, photo, proof that you've paid the fees, and then a confirmation page from the DS-160. When you make that application online, you will have the ability to print out a page that you'll need to take with you to the embassy. And then additional documentation, as I mentioned before, each embassy might differ a little bit in the process and what kind of documents they want to see other than these required ones. So it's always a good idea to check that website and see what additional information or documents the embassy recommends or requires. Next slide. Okay, so you'll have your interview, and it's possible, that you will not qualify and that you will be refused. The most common basis for refusal is called 214B, and that is a section of the law that says every applicant for non-immigrant visa is presumed to be an immigrant until he satisfies a consular officer that he does not have that intention. Now, what does that mean for you as a student? First of all, the consular officer is going to want to have the answer to 4 basic questions. They're going to want to know, who are you? What do you intend to do in the U.S.? How are you going to pay for it? And then what do you intend to do when you complete your approved studies? So these are the basic questions that the consular officer is going to ask you. They're going to want to know that you're prepared for the course of study, that you've done appropriate preparation for it. They're going to want to know something about you, about your motivation, a little bit about why you want to study in the U.S. They might ask you why you want that particular school. They're just trying to get a sense of you and who you are, and whether it's believable that you are going to go to the U.S., do what you say that you're going to do, and then return. There are no magic answers or anything. It's just they're talking to you as an individual, because every applicant has to qualify on their own merits. So the best way you can prepare for that is to just be prepared to tell your story. You want to be honest and truthful, and answer the officer's questions, and then more than likely you will be approved for a visa if you qualify. We're finding that we are approving worldwide about 88% of applicants. So most applicants do qualify and they do receive the visa. Okay, so the next most common reason for refusal is called, it's section 221G of the law. And that is a refusal that simply allows an officer to sort of put a case on hold until the applicant provides more information, or till the officer gathers more information. Now, if you hear the consular officer tell you that you were refused 221G, Don't panic, keep listening, because that means you've overcome 214B, and now it's just a matter of getting some more information. So just make sure you listen, because the consular officer will tell you what is needed now in addition. So listen so that you can make sure that you provide that. And then 212A ineligibilities, there's a long list of them at travel.state.gov, but these are basically ineligibilities, things that will prevent you from being qualified for a visa, for example, criminal activity. So if you were convicted of a crime in the United States at some point on the previous visit, it's possible that you would be ineligible. But these are pretty rare with students. So, next slide. Okay, denials. If you are denied the visa under 214B, you'll get a piece of paper that explains that basis of the law. Because of the confidentiality in the visa process, by law, we're not allowed to share information about your case with anyone other than with you. So if you're the person you're working with at a school in the U.S. Contacts us for information, we're not going to be able to provide that for them. Next slide. Okay, and administrative processing is just a term that we use for anything that causes us to have to refuse the case 221G. And if you remember, 221G means is a status that just puts the case on hold until we need more information. So administrative processing can be anything. Maybe we just need one more little document, or maybe there's something else that we need to check in your case. But administrative processing, as I said, it could be any number of things. Excellent. Okay, and just to give you an idea of how many student visas that we issue, you can see that last fiscal year, and that goes from October to September every year. So fiscal year 2014, we issued almost 600,000 student visas. And you can see that it's increasing every year in all categories. And over the last 10 fiscal years, we've increased the number of visas issued by over 90%. So we're doing lots and lots of visas all over the world. Next slide. And then you can see last year, these are the countries whose nationals we issued visas to last year. You can see China is #1, and then the rest, they change every year, but it's basically usually these 10 countries. Now, we anticipate we're going to be issuing more visas in Brazil and Mexico in the next several years because of a program called 100,000 Strong in the Americas. And that's a program where we want to have many more students from the U.S. studying in those countries, and many more applicants from those countries, or students from those countries studying in the U.S. So, but in any case, the odds are pretty high that you'll qualify, and the student visas represent a people-to-people exchange that's very important to the United States in our public diplomacy. If you're interested, apply, and chances are high that you will be approved. Excellent. Okay, so if you want some more information about the process for applying for the visa, or just about visas in general, first website you should look at is travel.state.gov. There's more information there about how actually to go online and apply with the DS-160 that I mentioned earlier. It also has links to every embassy or consulate website so that you can get more specific information about the process, where exactly you're going to apply. The other thing that you can see at the embassy websites are videos. A lot of them have now videos where you can see actually the process of what it's going to look like on the day that you arrive. And I always recommend that people look at those videos, because it might help you know what to expect a little bit, which might reduce your nervousness, which might enable you to better tell your story and qualify for the visa. SEAC.state.gov is a website where you can check the status of your application. So for example, if your case is refused 221G because we need to do some more things or need more information, you can type in the code that you'll get on the DS-160 confirmation page, and you can see the status of your application there. And then specifically for J visas and the different exchange visitor programs that I mentioned, as I said before, there's over 115 different ones. You can see information about that at j1visa.state.gov. Okay, so that is the basic process, and now we will take your questions. Okay, here's a question about with my F1 visa after my graduate course, will I be given additional years to working experience in my field of study? Yeah, there is the opportunity after you finish a bachelor's degree and again after a master's degree for what's called optional practical training. And this gives you time to actually work with an employer and practicing the skills that you gain through your study in the U.S. Now, if your degree is in a STEM field, science, technology, engineering, or mathematics, there is a program where you can stay an additional 19 months. So the basic program is 12 months, but if you're in one of these STEM fields, there's possibility you can stay for a total of 27 months and work.
Question from Zayed. He wants to know if he's been here on one exchange program, if he can come back on another.
Okay.
On a J.
Okay. There is the possibility of participating in additional J programs. The thing about that, though, is, as I mentioned earlier, if you have a J visa for one program and you want to come back and do a second one or even a third one, then you'll need a new J visa.
So another question from Zayed was, can I have a visa for studies in the U.S. before having the confirmation from the university?
Okay, in order to even apply for a student visa, you'll have to have the proper form. If you're applying for an F visa, you'll have to have an I-20. And if you're applying for a J, you'll have to have a DS 2019. So you cannot apply until you have those forms. So that would be the first step, is to be admitted by a school and then come for the visa application.
Okay, so Caesar has a question in regards to, is he permitted to work while at grad school on his student visa?
Okay, now it is possible to work, but the rules are pretty strict. I mentioned one program that's called optional practical training, and there might be some opportunities to work on campus, but those are things that you'll need to talk to your school administrator about.
So there's a question from, is it Yongi, in regards to, she's currently studying in high school in the U.S. and basically wants to go on to an undergraduate degree. What would be your recommendations on what she should do next? Okay,
as I mentioned before, when you are admitted into the U.S. on an F visa, you're admitted for duration of status. So as long as you continue to study in the U.S. and you're maintaining your studies, it's possible to finish a high school program if you're on an F1, and then go to university and then to graduate school. However, if you, during that time, and that could be, several years, but during that time, if you leave the U.S. and want to re-enter, then you're going to have a current visa. So if during the time you were in the U.S. with that F visa, it expired, you leave the U.S. and you want to re-enter, you're going to need to apply for a new visa.
So Bassam is asking a question in regards to if he obtains an F1 visa, are his siblings allowed to come and study with him if they're like a brother and sister versus a child?
Okay, there for siblings there is not what we call a derivative visa. If for example you wanted to study in the U.S. on an F visa and you're married, then you could bring your spouse on an F2 visa. If you have dependent children, you can also bring them on an F2. However, there is no dependent visa like that for siblings. So your siblings would have to have their own F visas to study in the U.S.
So we have a question from Raj Kiran in regards to they've been previously denied for their visas, and they want to know if that impacts a new visa application. Was it put it back in?
Okay. Every application is a new application, and we look at the applicant anew. It's very common for people to not qualify the first time because maybe they were nervous, they weren't able to effectively explain why they wanted to go to the U.S. So it is we do recommend people that if that happens, to feel free to apply again, or to apply again if your circumstances have changed considerably. For example, if you don't qualify the first time because you weren't able to show that you were able to pay for the school, but now you do have access to funds, that would be a reason to reapply. But we don't, as I said, just because you were refused once doesn't mean that you will never qualify in the future.
An additional question from the same student. He's just concerned that the time at the window was only 3 minutes. Can you tell us a little bit more about that time when we talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, that's very common. Typically, consular officers have between 3 to 5 minutes, sometimes less, at very busy posts. It's just the reality of the number of applicants that we have. And it's very possible to tell your story effectively in that amount of time. As I said, we approve, over 85% of student visa applicants, and that is enough time for us to look at your case. Now, sometimes we have people who are disappointed that the consular officer didn't look at their documents. And the reality is there's only a few documents that are required. We've talked about those. And the consular officer doesn't have the need to look necessarily at all the documents that you bring. So yes, it's not a lot of time, but consular officers are trained to make the decisions quickly, and that just means that you will need to be able to tell your story, concisely in just a small amount of time.
Thank you. We have another question from Maya. Maya is wondering, she has dual citizenship, and so she wants to know, does she have to apply for 2 separate visas, or can she just do one?
No, if you have dual citizenship, assuming that one of those citizenships is not U.S., because if you do have U.S. citizenship, then you do not need a visa. You cannot get a visa if you are a U.S. citizen. So, but if you have 2 nationalities, it doesn't matter to us. Just present the passport that you want to present, and we'll adjudicate you as a national of that country.
I think this question is similar to an earlier one, but Stephanie Akiro is asking, is it possible for her parents to be able to come with her on her F1 student visa?
Now, there is not a derivative visa for parents. So if a student comes on an F1 and their parents want to come as well, they'll have to apply for a different type of visa.
Okay, we have another great question coming in from Rex Tan. Rex is asking, he's currently in the United States on a visitor's visa. If you'd like to apply for a student visa, does he need to return to his home country? Can he do it in country?
There is a process to change your status in the U.S. That is done through Department of Homeland Security, specifically it's called USCIS. It's U.S. Citizen and Immigration Services. So you can change your status. There's an application that you have to fill out and a fee. So you can do it that way. Or if you want to depart the U.S. and re-enter, then you would need to apply for the student visa. So you could do either one, and you'll have to investigate which one is more convenient for you.
Matthew is asking a question in regards to using scholarship funds to prove he has enough money for his education for his visa application. Is that okay? And if so, how does he find out the exact cost that he has to put down to meet from the university?
Okay, when you're admitted to a university, they will, that's a time when you talk to them about scholarships or how much money is available for you from the school. When you get your I-20, the school will put on the form how much the cost will be for tuition and living expenses for the first year. So there will be a cost estimate. So we'll be looking at that I-20 to determine how much you're going to have in order to pay for school. They will also have scholarship information on there. So if you have a scholarship, it'll reflect that amount, and so we'll know that amount the school is going to provide, so you're not going to have to cover.
Another student, Yan Yi, has a question in regards to transferring schools. I'm not sure if this is in regards to transferring after she initially just received her visa, or if this is transferring once she's in the United States. But do you have any recommendations on doing that if she wants to switch schools? Does she need a new I-20 or a new visa?
If you transfer schools in the U.S., that's something that you'll need to work with your school, the previous school and the new school, and you'll work out with them about the I-20. Once you are inside the U.S., the visa is no longer relevant. So you can transfer schools while you're in the U.S. You don't need a visa to do that. However, if you transfer to the new school and then say you leave the U.S. for summer vacation, whatever, then you'll need a visa to get back in. Now, if the F visa that you had previously is not expired, you can use that same visa with a new I-20 to enter the U.S. Now, if that F visa has expired, then you will need to apply for a new one, and you'll need that new I-20 for your application. And you'll need to bring that on the day of the interview.
Great. I had another question from a student that came in earlier, and it was basically they wanted to come to the U.S. to travel before they started their classes. Is there like a earliest time that they can arrive in the U.S. before starting their course?
Yeah, you can enter the U.S. up to 30 days before your class starts. So if you're going to enter more than 30 days, then you'll have to enter on a different type of visa, like a B visa.
We have another question from Jazib Ikram, and he's asking if he's here on an F1 visa and completes a study program, are there any opportunities to work following his studies?
Yeah, as we talked about this earlier, sort of at length about there's optional practical training. So when you finish your undergraduate degree, your bachelor's degree, then you have 12 months that you can work on optional practical training. You would work that out with your school, just before you graduate. There's also another program, it's called curricular practical training, and that's an option to work while you're in doing your studies. Again, that you'll have to work that out with your school while you're in the U.S.
Okay, another great question from Maya asking if she's in the U.S., is she able to attain a U.S. driver's license while she's here as an international student?
That depends on the particular state that you're in. So you'll need to check with the state. Sometimes they're called Department of Motor Vehicles. Sometimes it's called Bureau of Motor Vehicles. But your school that you're going to should be able to give you more information on that.
Another question we get in quite often is there an age limit for applying to a student visa? Like a younger age and I guess an older age?
You can study in the U.S. on a student visa for grades 1 through, PhD. And it's the same basic process. You'll need an I-20 and you'll need to apply for a visa.
Okay, we have another great question from Usama Gulzar. Basically, it looks like they're asking if they're given an F1 visa, then some kind of circumstances happen that they can't come. Do they need to reapply for a whole new visa, or how long is that visa valid for to come to the U.S. a different semester?
Okay. Once you get the student visa, that visa is good, for a particular amount of time, and that depends on the country that you're from, your citizenship. Different countries have different lengths of visas. based on what's called reciprocity. So whatever the country gives U.S. citizens is what we give citizens of that country. So for example, some countries, Mexico has 48 months. You'll get an F visa for 48 months. China used to be 12 months, but now it is 60 months. Is that right? 60 months? Yeah, 60 months. So you can check that out if you go to the embassy or consulate in your country, and it'll tell you the validity. Okay, so if you have a visa that is still good, then you can enter in the future with that same visa and let's say a different I-20 for a different program. Did that answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So another question came in is, how can I extend my visa? So say if their studies are taking longer, would they see someone at the university or do they come back to the consulate? How would a student do that?
Okay, you can't extend the visa because remember the visa is just to get in and out of the country. Now you could renew the visa, and there's two possibilities for that. It's in both cases to renew a visa, you would need to do the application online, the DS-160, and you'd have to have an I-20 and so forth. But there is a possibility that you would not need to appear for an in-person interview. And this is a program we have that's called Interview Waiver Program. Check the website for the consulate or embassy that you would apply at, and there's a possibility that you would not have to go for an interview. Now, for that program though, you cannot be in the U.S. You cannot send your passport back to your to your family in your home country. You have to be outside of the U.S. in order to qualify for that.
So we had another question. The student's asking, so say if they came in on a 2-year Fulbright program, which would be a J visa, following that, would they be able to move on to a PhD on that same visa, or do they have to switch visas, or is that allowed at all? Gave you information on that?
Let's see. If you come in on a J visa and you want to extend the program or do a different program, you would need to check with the U.S. sponsor to see if that's allowable. For more information about J visas specifically, take a look at j1visa.state.gov. The rest of that question was about F study.
No, it was primarily just if they could stay on as a PhD.
Oh, okay, if they could stay
On the
same J visa. Yeah, you would have to check with each one of those programs has their own specific rules, so you'll need to check with the sponsor.
Okay, so we had a great question. Where did we go now? Came in from Nikhil, and Nikhil was asking, when they're showing the monetary amounts on the form to get the visa, can it be liquid assets, say like on a credit card, or does it have to be something that's in a bank account, like in a checking account?
We're going to want to see that you have assets available to pay for tuition and living expenses. So, showing us a credit card is probably not going to do it, but showing that you have assets to funds, liquid funds, is what we'll be looking at.
So another question from Yongji, and she's asking, do I need to go back to my country to renew a visa? So say they're in the United States studying and the visa expires, and they're in the middle of classes, do they need to get it renewed, or what happens?
Okay, remember that the visa is not really relevant once you're in the U.S. So if you're studying and your visa expires, you can still stay in the U.S. because you have duration of status. An expired visa does not mean you need to leave the country. Now, if you leave the U.S. and you're going home for a break and your visa's expired, then yes, you will need a new visa. You'll apply for it just like you did the first time, but as I mentioned earlier, there's a possibility that you won't have to go for an interview when you want to renew your visa. But in any case, this cannot be done in the U.S. You have to be outside of the U.S. in order to apply for a visa.
Okay, so Luciano is asking, If I'm in the United States on a J visa, is it easy for my parents to get a visa, or does my visa not get taken into consideration if they're applying for a visitor visa?
Um, it it might be, it's not a requirement. I mean, every applicant has to qualify in their own right for the visa category that they seek. Um, your circumstances may or may not play into it, but certainly, you know, if the purpose of their visit is because they want to visit their son who's studying in the U.S., and we see that you have were issued a student visa, well, then that would make sense that they would want to visit you for that purpose. But really, it doesn't have any, it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with their application for that visa at that point in time.
So Mohammed is asking, he says he's a GED graduate. Is there any difference if from a GED graduate or a high school graduate applying for a U.S. university? Is there any issues with visas around that?
No, there are no issues with visas for that. If every student or every applicant who comes to us with a valid I-20, we assume that that person, you know, is qualified, was seen as qualified by the school for admission. So the school will look at your qualifications to admit you, and then we will look at your qualifications for the visa. We're not going to be looking at, you know, your high school or how you got your high school degree. No.
Thank you. So Raj Kiran Bigala is asking a question. They're wanting to know if they're approved already for a B2 visa, but then they apply to a U.S. university and get accepted. Will that F1 cancel the B2, or how would that work?
No, we don't automatically cancel your B visa because you now have an F. Because it's possible that you want to travel to the U.S. for tourist purposes, even when you have the F visa. So no, you maintain the B visa.
So Osama is asking a question in regards to STEM. Is there any special programs for students who are in STEM, like a longer OPT or anything like that?
Yeah, now when I see your question here, something about offered a F1 visa of 6.5 years, we don't have any, the visa does not depend on STEM. OPT does depend, has something to do with STEM. So for example, the basic OPT program is 12 months. If you are studying in a STEM field, you have the possibility of extending your OPT for an additional 17 months so that you can actually stay in the U.S. for 29 months. Is that right, 29 or 27? 29, yeah. So you can actually stay in OPT in the U.S. For 29 months.
Nikhil has another question. So Nikhil is saying that if he has a close relative already living in the U.S., does that at all affect his chances of getting a student visa?
It may or it might not. It just depends on all the circumstances.
So Stephanie Ikiro is asking a question. Is there any universities that the embassy does not encourage students to go to, or how does a student know if they can go to a university in the U.S. and that it's okay to get a visa for it?
If you have a valid I-20 or a valid DS 2019, then we will adjudicate the visa. We do not have a list of universities. There is the Department of Homeland Security has a division called SEVP, and they certify schools to host international students. Only those schools that are certified can issue I-20s. So if the applicant appears with an I-20, then we know that that school is authorized to have international students. I want to just reinforce a point that I made earlier about I-20s and visas and transferring schools. If you apply for a school for your first time with an I-20, that I-20 and the visa are going to need to match the first time that you enter the U.S. If you are in the U.S. and you transfer schools, and then you leave the U.S., if that visa is unexpired, you can use that same visa with a new I-20. There's no need to go and get another visa.
So I had an interesting question from Abduladi, and basically it looks like he's asking, so he had a conditional acceptance to a university, and starting with an English program. For that, does he have to show money for the next year when he starts classes, or does he show just for that English language program that he has to start with to complete his conditional offer?
Okay, we will look at the I-20 and see the money that, or the estimated cost of the first year of education that the school puts on the I-20, and that's a figure that we will be looking at to make sure that you have the ability to cover those expenses.
So Bassam has a question. Can I, in addition to my F1 visa, apply for a 5-year tourist visa, or should I just wait and just do the F1 visa?
It's up to you. It's possible to apply for 2 different visa categories at the same time. You'll have to fill out a DS-160 for each one because the questions change depending on what visa category you're looking for. But it is possible to apply for both at the same time, and that's up to you and what you think will be your purpose of travel. If you think that you're going to be leaving the U.S. and then re-entering, for a non-student purpose, then you might consider also applying for the B. But like I said, it's up to you, and it is possible to apply and be approved for both.
So Kyle just had a question. He's asking for the presentation to be passed out somehow. Just so you know, it is being recorded, and you'll be able to access it throughout the day on the College Week Live platform. So you can go back and check that out. Another question we just came in was a student, Mohammed is asking, if he goes and first completes an associate's degree and does OPT, can he then go on that same visa, complete an undergraduate degree, and then do OPT again, or is he limited to just doing the OPT once?
You're not limited to doing OPT. You can do it after, and I'm sorry, I'm not exactly sure if you can do it after an associate's degree, but definitely you can do it after a bachelor's degree. And then you can go on to a master's, and then after you complete a master's, then you can also do more OPT. So I'm sorry about the associates. I don't know off the top of my head, but definitely after a bachelor's, and again after a master's.
Cool, thank you. So I think we'll start wrapping up. Do you have any additional words of wisdom for students who are looking to apply for their visa?
What I would tell everybody is, remember that most students are qualified. We issue a lot of visas. Also, look at that embassy website and watch whatever videos they have. We find that a lot of people are nervous. It's the first time they've ever talked to a U.S. official, in English. It can be intimidating. You go through, security when you get to the embassy, and most people would be nervous. So take a look at those videos, try to reduce your nervousness, be prepared to explain who you are and what you want to do in the U.S., how you're going to pay for it, and then what you intend to do when you're finished. And chances are you will qualify for the student visa. Good luck, everyone.